free, and enjoy more of what the world has to offer in this action one, because this is where most human beings screw the pooch.
So a little one-person trampoline. Very
I screen shared it. Like, there's no excuse. Like, phone numbers are just out there. You just got to pick up the phone, smile, and dial. So. Good morning, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Talk to Tanner Morning Show, where we go over tips, tricks, ideas, and exercises to help make you the absolute best entrepreneur you can be, not only for yourself, but for the people you love and care about most. Personal development. We have a very interesting, fun show today. One of a good friend, someone I've had the privilege of meeting in college and now progressing and seeing all the craziness he is taking on with his schedule in life today. Bryce Rentschler, a veteran, investigator, a detective, someone who's making a huge impact on not only the community, but a lot of these topics and industries I've been wanting to learn more about how we can be more helpful on the outside, looking from the outside in, and vice versa, getting someone a fresh perspective from someone who's working in the detective, military veteran, reacclimating his life, and also just an investigator to help with our children, to help with our communities function and continue to improve. So without further ado, I welcome on Bryce Rentschler onto the show. Bryce, thanks so much for coming onto the show. Excited to have you here.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thanks for the invite.
So today we're going to kind of take this out in a couple sections for our fans, for the people, hopefully they can get a better from it. So Bryce is a military veteran, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of let him take the reins from here. So Bryce, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit, were you pretty young? Did you get in the military right away? How did that journey kind of start for you and kind of progress from there?
Sure. So in high school, it was something that I was always kind of interested in. I wouldn't say that from the beginning, sort of, that it was a position I really found myself going towards. But as I kind of got older, I think the big recognition was that I was really craving more of a personal challenge, something that could challenge me physically, mentally, where, kind of can test your mettle, so to speak. And as I kind of approached graduation day for high school, I realized that it was something that, I wanted to pursue. Right around senior year, I would say the beginning of senior year of high school is when I really made the decision that was going to be where I started my adult career.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember what year I got to meet you, but one of the first discussions I had with you was kind of your role as a sniper team lead, and kind of like, what does that mean, and kind of how did you get picked to that? Were you just super talented, or was it a bunch of grit and hard work? Like, how does that even come into about?
The route I took to become a sniper, and it was an unbelievable opportunity that I had. I wouldn't say it was anything that I was overly talented or, really better in any specific category.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that why I got picked is that it was something early on in my military career that I wanted to do. That was one of my main goals that I wanted to accomplish. I knew it was a very exclusive school. I knew passing was difficult. I knew if I could gain this skill set, it would really allow me to separate myself from the pack. But the route I took to get there was really just one through, I would say, sheer determination. So when you go to a military school, you have to build these school packets, and it's a series of documents, checklists, appointments that you have to make, and it progresses up the chain of command. With everybody being able to approve your attendance to this school, and it can be a very difficult process getting your paperwork in front of the right person to have it signed. And I think it must have taken me about a year and a half for me to finally get all of my paperwork approved and be slotted in the course. And it was building that packet multiple times, it being denied at one step or not meeting a time deadline at another, and you'd have to start from the beginning. So it was just a story of kind of not really giving up on something that I really wanted to do.
What's something that, so it gets glamour, I think in the last handful of years, I'm sure you've seen, like in the movie world, like
Yeah.
this position gets very glamorized, and you hear it in your ear and you're like, that sounds pretty fucking wild to be
Right.
what's one thing that like surprised you about it and that you didn't really expect, things you liked?
I would say that the biggest surprise I had in actual sniper school was really how prevalent mathematics becomes in a lot of these shooting problems.
Yeah.
It's something that you hear about through playing video games, and again watching the
Right.
movies of the concept of dialing in and calculating wind and calculating elevation and in distance from you to your target and what that looks like. And when you learn the basics of it, it's interesting how much a lot of that early algebraic that you learn in early high school comes back into play when you're trying to do a lot of these things. And it just reinforced being able to use mathematics in real world applications. So that was very surprising. You think it's the military, it's the United States military. You think it's going to be some high tech stuff and lasers, and in reality, they want to teach you the basics. So,
Yeah. And I'd imagine that. So and hopefully you can help me out with the terminology, that you're not, laying in the dirt and having to like do these calculations yourself. Do you have like a spotter or someone who like helps with that? Like I have.
Yeah. So in sniper school, it was you get assigned a spotter, but you rotate roles, right? So you learn the position of both shooter and spotter. When I got back to my unit, we built the teams up a little bit bigger. So we had 3 to 4 man elements, and then that would be combined for a bigger section. So yeah, you kind of the shooter's job is very much so just that. It's just being prepared to take the shot. The spotter is going to be the one that does the majority of the calculations. He'll assist in calculating the wind, distance. He's going to be assisting with adjusting for elevation and things like that.
Very cool. Well, shoot, I wanted to ask you about this. I mean, so a lot of people, it seems so tough to kind of handle that military lifestyle. So I wanted to hear from you kind of like how people get out of the military, and like how was that experience for you? Something I can't help but see is, so many veterans need a lot of help in the personal development department, like just managing day to day from their service. The reacclimation process seems like like non-existent almost, or I don't understand it per se. So how did kind of transitioning out of the military for you? Was that difficult? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that it's talked about a lot in the veteran community, and it's obviously become a major talking point for a lot of the media and political spheres. But the major issue becomes you have such a structured life. You're told when to wake up, what you're going to be doing that day, when you're going to eat, when you're going to be allowed to have your personal time, when you're going to be allowed to sleep, and then all of the sudden, traditionally, very suddenly, that structure is taken away from you, and all of the sudden, all of the choices become your own, and it can be overwhelming for a lot of people, especially people that have done a significant amount of time and built, become real accustomed to that lifestyle. To have that kind of removed, it not only removes that structure, it removes that purpose. So finding that very early on is a huge tool that in concept that veterans need to kind of grasp of that as you're approaching that date in which you're leaving the military. It's important to kind of have a general understanding of what you want to do, and in finding that purpose. The military has taken some better steps on assisting people with this transition. There's a lot of good companies out there that are working with service members who are preparing for transition. Now, traditionally, though, the way it goes is as you're approaching your discharge date, you go through the military's transition program. So they're going to teach you, how to build a resume. You're going to attend. You have the opportunity to attend some classes. They're going to teach you things about the GI Bill. So they're taking steps to kind of try to give service members the tools to be successful upon their transition. But that obviously doesn't mean necessarily that everybody's going to, acclimate very quickly. It can take some time. And for me, it really did, the transition from the military and then, spending the summer at home and then heading off to Western Illinois and getting to Western Illinois and becoming a part of the college atmosphere. It's a very big transition, especially when you're, entering that sphere from an older age. It can be difficult to grasp, and you kind of, you really have to work hard to, find your purpose, and kind of stay true to some sort of plan that you have.
Man, finding your purpose and just being, I can't even imagine just going from total, like, this is what you do right here, right now, and then learning the disciplines of that, but then also kind of looking at it like, well, you're not making choice. You're not like having to make a choice at that point versus then you get dumped off in the real world. And then it's like, what do you want to do?
Right. Exactly.
And then why do you want to do it? Yeah. So kind of hard to manage. That's pretty, what's your biggest takeaway from the military? Are you glad you did it?
Yeah, I am. The greatest gift the military ever gave me was, very early on in my career, I had a pretty good mentor in one of my early team leaders. And he really explained to me that the military is great at forming a baseline, so to speak, of the type of behavior and, that they really want to see in you. But it also is a great atmosphere where you can challenge yourself, and it becomes kind of incumbent on the individual to really see how far that they can take it. Right. It's very much put so in, like, if you are willing to put in the work, there are a lot of great opportunities for you in the military. And I think taking that concept back into the civilian world was incredibly beneficial. Right. Just understanding that if I put in the hard work and I develop that confidence within myself, that no matter what goal I set, I'm going to find a way to achieve it. And kind of having that baseline foundation to work off of is really great.
Man, no, well said. Beautiful. I think there's I'm sure a lot of people, I don't know the statistics or the data, if like less people are joining the military, if more people are joining the military. But it seems like it can really give a lot of structure to your life in general, especially if you've never been like pushed physically before. Yeah. I think that's a huge, not saying people are soft, but just like sometimes, a lot of people just haven't experienced like discomfort or like, I just don't care where you come from or what you're saying right now. You do that.
Right. Yeah. And it is. And it's, like anything else, the military embodies the ideal of it is what you make of it. So if you want to skate, if you want to, be the bottom of the pack guy, the military, you would always be able to find places to hide. And that's not any different in the civilian world. So make the best of it. It offers a lot of good opportunities if you're willing to put in the work. The mental toughness that you'll build within the military by having to do, tough physical challenges, adhere to a strict schedule. It builds that foundation of discipline, that can really help people when they return to the civilian world or in whatever career that they're choosing to pursue.
Yeah. No, kind of into that transitioning. So so kind of this isn't I kind of see this quite a bit. The like law enforcement is attracted to military personnel. It seems that a lot of the skills and the structure, like what are some like was that why you wanted to get into law enforcement? Was there some overlap? Like how did this transition kind of happen for you?
So I think even before I wanted to join the military, I wanted to be involved in some facet of law enforcement.
Okay, cool.
At
Yeah.
an early age. I didn't know exactly what that looked like or what that would manifest into, but it was something that I was always very interested in. I took a lot of criminal justice courses in high school through dual credit programs, so it was an avenue that I kind of got to experience early on. And that transition from the military, like I said, it builds a good foundation of discipline, and that's it's built. The military is built upon that sense of integrity, and that can be it can be an easy transition from the role of a service member to law enforcement, and your departments like a lot of those skills and those character building traits that you have and build upon in the military, and they like to utilize those in agencies.
Yeah.
And because that foundation is there, and because of the fact that most police departments organizationally are some type of paramilitary hybrid, the transition can be a lot easier for service members into the law enforcement role than it is for traditional civilians into the law enforcement role.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the seeing that kind of is there a when it comes to like law enforcement, do you think there's just like a nice priority? Do they do direct recruiting out of like do police forces go directly to the military to try and get guys immediately? Is that like do they work together on that kind of
So
stuff? It makes so much sense.
yeah, so like I was saying before on that, when you're preparing to transition out of the military, you attend a lot of these classes
Okay.
that help you build upon these skill sets. While you're attending these classes, a lot of times they'll set up kind of career and recruiting fairs, and local agencies have the ability to stop by and discuss why you should apply to their department or their agency. So yeah, they're definitely targeting that audience with recruitment efforts. Like when I was stationed at Fort Campbell in Kentucky, Nashville PD was doing a lot of heavy recruitment
Okay.
at Fort Campbell itself, and
Yeah.
really advertising that if you're separated with an honorable discharge from the military, we can pretty seamlessly transition you from the role of service member into our law enforcement academy. And a lot of people, a lot of the Nashville Metropolitan Police Department come from Fort Campbell and in the military because of that.
Yeah, very cool. And this is kind of a question more for like the political sphere that I couldn't help, but I really want to ask you. I think
Yeah.
so over the last year or so, I can't help it. It's too bad because I know a lot of cops and I know a lot of like very skilled and talented people, but there's almost like this like scare factor with like when a cop's behind you, when they're just like in their presence, when in all reality, these are the people who are keeping this stuff like safe and like okay. And like I am like, you can look if you watch any international news, you can see how important law enforcement really is. So how do you think we can help like humanize? I stole this word from, by the way, Bryce makes a lot of posts on LinkedIn and they're awesome. You're a really good writer, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Been reading a lot of that stuff, but yeah, stealing this word from some of Bryce's content, like how do we humanize like law enforcement and try and peel back a little bit of this layer of fear, or I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah, this is something that I've been, speaking of writing, something I've been writing personally a lot about in discussing law enforcement culture, in the concept of humanizing law enforcement. Obviously, we're consistently in the media spotlight, and I vary from a lot of my, law enforcement brothers and sisters and some of the sentiments that I hold about this concept. But due to that spotlight, we have, that sense of we're constantly being critiqued, and there's fear of being held, held hostage in the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
But I believe that I strongly believe in the importance of that element, and I believe that how we really achieve the humanization of law enforcement, it begins within the law enforcement culture itself. From the academy basically on, it's drilled into you very early about how, upon entering this career position, you're very different now from the civilian world. You have to act different. You have a target on your back, which isn't to say that those things aren't true. But I think if we started, rather than immediately discussing how we are now different from the communities and the people within our communities that we serve, we start reinforcing how our role in law enforcement is attributable to many of the career fields in the civilian world, right? So the law enforcement work as mental health workers. They work, they work with kids. They're educators. These are all things that we can bring to the community. The things that many law enforcement across the country regularly do. And I think if we start contributing our personal skill sets and our career skill sets, and really attaching them to civilian-like positions, we can start to see that there's always going to be more common ground between us than there is differences.
Yeah.
And I think if you start to build on that foundation, people will start to see you as just a member of the community that is doing a job, rather than this paramilitary organization that has such a fear factor within the community.
Oh man, the being able to do that, and I really like what you said about just having it like your personal touch of showing that, you are a human, and you want to go home too.
Mm-hmm.
You want to continue to grow and develop yourself just as much as helping the community out and kind of helping with that. But yeah, being able to personalize. Do you think that that's so? Not everyone's created equal, right? You're a very personable person. You're easy to talk to. You easy to come on. Is this like a skill that you think a lot of your fellow officers want to continue to develop their social skills? Is that something that's even taught in law enforcement? I don't know much about. I don't know anything about it.
It's starting to be taught more now, right? I have a huge problem with the quote unquote the RoboCops. The people that that wear their badge is like this ultimate sign of we automatically deserve respect. We automatically deserve this special treatment.
Yeah.
And it's a theme that has been present in law enforcement culture for decades, right? And it's with a lot of the movements about law enforcement reform across the country, it's a lot of organizational leaders are starting finally to discuss. The huge thing in law enforcement and the biggest issue has always been the refusal of the system to change, regardless of public opinion, regardless of new information. And I think that is our biggest challenge moving forward for the law enforcement culture as a whole, is let's build in some flexibility and adaptability, and let's start making these changes before we're told to make these changes. If we start to show the public that we are willing to change and do it ourselves as a culture, I think that will go a long way in kind of repairing and rebuilding trust with our communities. But like I said, that starts very much so from within. But to get back to that RoboCop, that mentality and that ego of automatically deserving respect, it kills a lot of credibility with the people that you meet immediately. If we focus more so on those social skills and talking to people like they are people, rather than something that we constantly have to be wary of, you're going to get a lot farther as far as, building relationships. And that goes directly into, when you're investigating crimes and conducting interviews and things like that, you're always going to find that people are more susceptible to speak with you and give you information if you treat them like a person, right? It goes back to that elementary theme of treat people the way you want to be treated. And people recognize that.
The golden rule. Yes. On point with, so you'd mentioned in investigating and kind of doing this. It's really encouraging that someone like yourself is willing to dive into these topics, talk about these topics, because sometimes it can sound a little woo-woo and it's like kind of hard to talk about it. But in all reality, if we want to really get on that personal level, would you mind, you'd mentioned investigation, and so I kind of wanted to hear what you had in kind of reading your LinkedIn post and seeing your work. You're an investigator and a detective, and how does this tie into like your work? What does this really mean for what you do?
Yeah. So my current position title is I'm a detective here at the St. Charles Police Department. So I work within the investigations division. I'm a juvenile detective or a school resource officer. So I kind of split my time between a high school that I'm assigned and taking on regular casework here in the investigations division. Alongside that, I'm part of 2 task forces. So I'm part of our regional, our county major crimes task force, and then I'm part of the nationwide internet crimes against children task force. So what that looks like is, you work together and take trainings for the internet crimes against task force that it's more specialized towards the digital and cyber sphere, investigating those kind of crimes. And then the Kane County Major Crimes Task Force is, as major events occur within the county, we can be called out to kind of supplement whatever agency that is conducting an investigation.
Okay, this will be one of my follow-up questions about how you handle a lot of this dark stuff. And I really wanted to kind of get on some of these points. So my girlfriend, she's a special ed teacher. She's in schools, and we see all the news about like school shootings, protecting children, like protecting our teachers. Is this something that law enforcement is having to double down on, like an education basis, or is the news blowing this stuff out of proportion? Like, what's kind of, from your perspective within, like what's kind of going on here, and what's your thoughts about it?
Yeah. So by no means do I think it's something that's being blown out of proportion. This is a very real issue, and it's going to continue to remain a very real issue until we as a society start to determine and set up a few things. So I can tell you from within law enforcement, this is something obviously we take very seriously. We train for it regularly. We're constantly trying to learn new and improved security methods, how we respond to these crimes, how we communicate about these crimes, how we prepare and train and educate. It's a constantly adapting and evolving system. And that's especially true within my department. They've made it very clear that we are going to stay within the realm of the know when it comes to these incidents occurring. I think the larger concept is spending more time in the prevention aspect, and a lot of that goes into conducting good behavioral risk assessments, developing relationships with the community so that they feel safe and comfortable being able to relay information that they find and that they see back to the police department for us to investigate. Getting people connected with good community resources that are going to help build their own welfare, make them feel connected to the sense of community, not alienated from. There's a lot that can be broken down within kind of what I just said there. But in a long-winded way of answering your questions, it's something that we take seriously. We're training on, and it's, due to the prevalence of it in the media and how much spotlight it's given, it's something that's always there that we're ready for.
With you kind of taking on this role, you said you were assigned some schools. Is there anything that's been surprising to you starting to work closer with the education system, with these people, kind of seeing it? Like, is there anything that's kind of been coming up that you've been learning a lot about that's really got you interested, or that's got you fired up?
Yeah, so I'm working on some pretty big projects here, not only at the St. Charles Police Department, but in the county. So when I got into this role, I didn't know a lot about it. Juvenile law and the juvenile criminal justice system can be, intimidating and a little difficult
Yeah.
to navigate, especially when you're investigating crimes, or you're figuring out the best avenues to, conduct enforcement with the juvenile that commits a crime or an
Yeah.
offense. Um, they're they're very in depth, and there's a lot more that you have to put into it than you would when it comes to an adult, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But one of the things I quickly realized is, how outdated a lot of the systems were within the state of
Oh, yeah.
Illinois, as far as, the programs and using research and using data to kind of drive our enforcement process. Right. So I've been diving pretty heavily into criminology and, a lot of the statistics and juvenile statistics uh, behind what law enforcement should be doing, and what does it look like when we have a kid that commits a crime, and what's the best way to kind of disrupt that juvenile to adult criminal pipeline, right? So when we see that early onset delinquent behavior, what's the best method of preventing that from maintaining or getting any worse as they progress through life? And in doing a lot of this research, I've started to realize that a lot of the programs that we were using here in my own department were a little outdated. So I'm currently working on and have pitched new diversion programs that are going to, keep kids out of the formal juvenile justice system,
Yeah.
and give them the ability to, kind of connect them with the resources that they might need, that it's going to build upon the totality of their welfare. Not only their mental, their physical, their relationships in their lives, working with the family unit to kind of strengthen a lot of those core values, which all of the data and research shows, helps prevent that repeat delinquent behavior, rather than just simply shipping them off to a juvenile justice center and hoping that the juvenile court
Yeah.
system is going to be able to properly do it. It's kind of shocking to believe, but these are concepts we've known, that have existed in criminology since the 60s, right? When it comes to
Yeah. Okay.
juvenile delinquent behavior. And, when I first got in, it was surprising that a lot of the research and a lot of the methods weren't discussed. So I'm working kind of diligently to bring those into the spotlight and really highlight how we can use a lot of that research in law enforcement to kind of drive our policies and practices.
Man, I mean, if you could, out of so much available and so many cases going on, and I'm sure it's just really tough to, before we get to our last segment on personal development. I mean, are are you like gun ho on this 24/7? Are you able to turn this off like when you're not working? Like how do you show up? How do you show up consistently with the kind of the depth and the heaviness that kind of comes with a lot of this stuff? I mean, it can be pretty heavy, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it can be. It definitely can be. And, mental health and law enforcement, and us as police officers talking about our own mental health and taking care of ourselves is something that's being talked about more, but still not enough. It's something that is very important, having that work-life balance and keeping that kind of in check, being able to kind of leave the job at the job, is something that it's very difficult for newer officers. And, it was difficult for me when I first became a police officer.
Yeah.
Um, due to just the sheer weight of a lot of the issues that you have to deal with at work. It's something that I've gotten a lot better at moving forward.
Oh,
Um,
great.
but it's something that I have to work at. I'm very passionate. I love showing up to work every day to work with kids and work in trying to progress the law enforcement systems to better help our kids, to better help society.
Yeah.
I believe very strongly in that fact. It doesn't feel like work to me. It feels like, a concept and something that, I love so much and have found such a passion for that I have no problem doing it.
Yeah.
But when I do get home, when I do try to take that time, I make a very strong effort to kind of remove myself from those systems, give myself a break, allow myself to kind of not get burnt out as I kind of continually work on a lot of these cases and projects and ideas.
Yeah. I was wondering if they make you like, is there take home assignments or is it kind of cut off? I mean, are you allowed to have like the separation? I'm sure it depends. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
it really depends on a case by case basis. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, in the progression of updating our policies and our practices and doing the statistical research and doing these case analysis to kind of update policies and practices. That's a lot of stuff that I'm doing on my own time. So finding the time to work on those personal projects, it can be difficult because I have case assignments and I have responsibilities while I'm at work. But traditionally, the cases and the assignments that you're given at work, there's a cutoff. We're hourly employees, so
Yeah.
they do a very good job, and the union is strict on how you can work outside of your allotted schedule. If there's something serious, obviously there's some wiggle room within there, but yeah, traditionally, it's when you clock out, you're off the clock. As long as as far as the working a case or working an assignment is concerned.
This I think it's become so tantalizing, and so in TV of some of my favorite shows or stuff like True Detective. It's like one of
Hmm.
my favorite shows of all time. And I was recently watching the show called The Sinner, and these detectives, they literally go until they're like these people are broken. Like from
Hmm.
I'm a life coach, so kind
Yeah,
of viewing
right.
it as like this, it's like
Yeah,
you're
not the
doing great
healthiest.
work, man, but you're really
Yeah.
you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's I'm a big fan of True Detective too. But you see that, and when you kind of get into investigations, you start to wonder, oh man, is this kind of what my life turns into? And
Yeah,
I think the scary part is it very well could be,
yeah,
right? There is, especially when you start to work within the Internet Crimes Against, or the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I mean, there's something you can be doing every second of every day in
yeah.
investigating these crimes.
Hmm.
If you lose yourself to that process, if you really lose the sense of boundaries, so to speak, you can do some serious damage to your mental health. It's heavy stuff. It's, in that sphere, you're investigating a lot of stuff that is different to what you see even in regular law enforcement. There's a weight that comes into play when you start to investigate a lot of those crimes. But like a True Detective, even with regular cases, if you were that gun ho, you could work
Yeah,
yourself into the ground very, very easily, very, very quickly.
yeah,
So it's very important to kind of establish those boundaries of, all right, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to relax. I'm going to shut the cop side off and just allow myself to kind of shut down and reboot.
yeah. You're talking about even allowing this for like if we want to humanize like law enforcement and you getting in public schools, like getting with the community and letting we also, I'd imagine there's a level of accountability for ourselves to be that be able to turn that switch off and be able to come home to our families, to our friends, to people who, like, you know, because nobody wants to have someone who's turned on that dial 24/7. I'd imagine it can lead to some toxic relationships or just like some rough riding relationships and kind of having that heaviness with it.
Yeah, and that's one of the stereotypes that's been, built into law enforcement. There's a strong body of research and data that shows a lot of issues that police officers have at home with spouses and life
Yeah.
partners, as far as domestic violence, and divorce rates are concerned.
Yeah.
And that's something that we have to be aware of, and it can create a very toxic home culture. It can destroy our relationships if we allow it to.
Yeah.
We're not powerless to this job and the things that it does, but it just kind of goes back to what I was saying. It's when you're home, you're focusing on the, spending time building the relationships, working, returning to the individualistic elements of yourself that allow you to be present within your own home, and really shutting off that side of you so you can be present. If you're always thinking about what's the next thing you got to do, I mean, you can apply that to any career. If you're always constantly thinking about the next thing you got to do at work, or you leave work but your mind's still at work, it's going to break down your relationships, and it's going to do that very quickly. So being present, putting in as much time as you are at work in trying to accomplish things, put that time in this, put the same amount of time, the same amount of effort in your relationships and building, your personal foundation, because we lack that and we return to the job. We're doing a discredit to our community and society if we're not taking care of ourselves, because what the community then receives is a lesser version of ourselves.
Damn. Yeah, that is some absolute truth. I'm excited to re-listen to that. I mean, if we can I'm a big believer in the greatest gift I can give to the world is just be the absolute best version of me, show up, try and give what I can. And you got to take care of yourself. I mean, it's starting to show up. It seems like it's becoming a lot more popular. So really optimistic about people being willing to kind of dive into this stuff. So I kind of, as we wrap up today's session, I wanted a couple more questions about like kind of you specifically in your life outside of all the investigative, the detective, kind of all the work that you have going on. Like what is, like, from a personal standpoint, like what's one of your biggest challenges at the moment, and kind of, are you having fun with it? What are you working on? Like what's something you're trying to really overcome right now?
Yeah, so I would say this is going to tie into something I talked about earlier. So I'm working on updating a lot of our policies and practices.
Okay. Yeah.
And like I said, I've found my passion within juvenile law enforcement, and I'm matching my education and what I'm learning in the academic world. Finishing up my master's this semester, and then hopefully in the fall I'll be moving right into my PhD. And using a lot of the things that I've learned and contributing a lot of what's being talked about in the academic world and incorporating that into law enforcement. I'm a huge believer behind let's use research and data to drive our practices. But in doing so, we have to understand the full concept of a problem, the problem that is the juvenile justice system.
Yeah.
Data and trend shows what we have been doing. It is working kind of, sort of, right? There's been a heavy decline in delinquency rates and violent crime in kids, or in crime overall, since it peaked kind of late 80s, early 90s. But I think we're still not doing enough, right? We're starting to work within the juvenile justice system with a new generation that has a lot of different problems than we've traditionally seen. Cybercrime is a huge one of them, right? This is the first, Gen Z is the first fully digitally literate generation that we've had, and so they're going to come with their own nuances, and learning to operate within that sphere is very difficult to kind of figure out what is our best way of preventing these kids from becoming adult criminals. So I guess the biggest challenge for me has been, what is the best way to accomplish this goal? So I've been traveling, doing, presentations. I've been speaking with our
Yeah.
state's attorney. I've been,
Mhm.
talking with our administration. All good stuff so far. A lot of people are starting to grasp a lot of the ideas and my proposals that I'm bringing to the table.
Mhm.
Um, which is great, but it's, if I'm going to maximize kind of the effectiveness of what I'm working on, it's really, what does that look like, right? Is that, you know, how involved do I need to be in this concept to kind of really push it out there and really promote it, right? So that's the biggest challenge, is figuring out what that looks like. So I'm experimenting with a bunch of different stuff, building presentations. I started working on a website that people might be able to come to and learn about a lot of these ideas.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm having fun with it. I'm trying to, teaching myself new skills along the way. So yeah, all good stuff.
Building, I mean, you just have such an interesting guy with kind of your background and how you're open to, like, it's insane how it's like a big melting pot of like the skills and stuff. Like, I think so many people get hung up on like what I'm doing right now isn't what I want to do for my rest of my life. So, versus like, man, this is a real opportunity to like building skills, like building in working with children, doing presentations and speeches, and like writing, and then building websites, like all of these. I mean, essentially a decade from now, I'd imagine you're going to be able to do whatever the fuck you want, which is,
That'd
I
be
mean,
nice.
yeah. With this, kind of this in mind, being able to like do speaking, I love to speak. Did you have a hard time getting into that? Like starting out, like what were some opportunities? I saw some of your posts on LinkedIn about some presentations you did, but for people who want to just be public speakers and put more content out there, do you have any advice or kind of things that you've been learning along the way?
Yeah, I would say my biggest piece of advice is just go do it, right? It is, if it's something that gives you anxiety, if it's something that you're scared about, your body is going to reject the concept. Your mind is going to give you every excuse in the book not to get up on that stage and do it, not to say the things that you want to say, and not frame them in a way that people are going to understand. You kind of let the fear take over, and it's going to prevent you from a lot of good opportunities if you let it.
Mhm.
It was not by any means something I was comfortable with when I first started doing it. I mean, still public speaking is not something, is not an attribute that I would say that I'm really good at. It's something I'm working on. It's something I want to get
Yeah.
better at.
Mhm.
But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't an element of fear there. But it's more important for me to build that skill set than it is, to kind of run from it. So just get up there, do it. If if you have something that you want to talk about, that you're passionate about, don't be afraid to share it. It's, we're all truly working in the betterment of society. We want to
Yeah.
bring things to the table that make people happier, that make lives easier. And it's no different in law enforcement. And being able to publicly speak about them is one of the ways that you can do that. So if you feel like you got a good idea, you're confident about it, and you got the kind of the references to back it up, just get up there and do it. You're going to be surprised at how quickly you can overcome a lot of that fear and anxiety.
Yeah, the like this little bottle of just in your, I feel it like in my chest before I'm like
Oh
about to
yeah,
cry
definitely.
or something, like holy cow, like this.
Yeah.
It's funny how you see it, or maybe this is helpful to people, maybe it's not, but something that's helped me a lot was this. Okay, how do I view when I'm watching someone public speak? I'm not like concerned about really how they look, or I'm not
Hmm.
like too concerned about like if they trip up on one word, I don't
Right. Yeah.
care. Like I have so many problems in my own life that I'm just like not worried about
Yeah. You're right.
like
Yeah.
what they're, but versus when you go up there, you're like, oh man, this has got to be right. So maybe hopefully that could be comforting, that people want to hear what you have to say if you have good ideas.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like typically your audience that's going to tune in to listen to you,
Mhm.
um, wants to know more so about the content that you're talking about, rather than the little nuances that you feel like people might be really honing in on, so we're all humans. We're all going to make mistakes and goofs, and language and can be tough and irritating at times.
Yeah.
So, it's more recognizable and for you to be worried about it than really what your audience is going to be nitpicking.
Building skills, continue to get improvement. Bryce, I wanted to pull up your LinkedIn page. Is this your most common thing that you reference, that you use kind of for delivering content for folks? Do you have other social media channels where people can kind of get to know you a little bit?
No. So no, I don't. This is what I'm traditionally, I don't have any other social media. I don't do Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. This is the only piece of social media that I have. This is where if I have, things that I want to talk about, this is things that I want to talk about publicly. This is where I'll push, some thoughts and ideas about some concepts. Yeah, it's something new to me. I've had LinkedIn for a long time, but I'm really now working on, pushing some stuff out there and talking about a lot of the ideas that I have. Hopefully, maybe I could get this website off the ground, and share that on my LinkedIn. People will be able to come visit that and learn more in depth about some of the things I'm working on and some of the things that I'm working on within law enforcement. But yeah, this is where they'll find me.
Okay. Come here to find this man, learn from this man, detective, investigator, veteran, and advocate for restorative juveniles justice. Man, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So before we leave, would you mind explaining this quote and kind of what it means to you? I love this quote. So I wanted to hear what you had to say about it.
Yeah. So, well, like one of my new, I wouldn't say it's a project, so to speak. One of the things I'm really enjoying is going back and looking at reading a lot of the works of some great philosophers of our time. So reading Plato's Republic, learning Nietzsche's works and some of the more modern stuff. But this is the embodiment of everything I believe in as a juvenile detective and somebody that works with kids. You can sit up there and preach as much as you want, but if you don't embody and show a lot of the things that you're talking about, the concepts of being truthful and honest and hardworking, these are things that children and juveniles, they watch. They're more perceptive than people really give them credit for.
Yeah.
So being able to show them a lot of those traits and skills and embody everything we know when we talk about, we want them to be good contributing members of society. If we don't do the same, if we just preach and not practice, then we're doing a discredit to our juvenile community. So yeah, I found this quote, really love it. It's everything I kind of believe in with how we're working with kids.
Beautiful. Well, Bryce, I can't thank you enough. I'm going to have you hang out here for just a minute in the studio while I wrap up and do the outro. Thank you again for your time, for your efforts.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tanner.
Well, I hope everyone found that episode helpful. Bryce is a very unique man, continue to do unique work and continue to make a big impact. I really hope more people in the world of law enforcement can take this role of leadership. Children learn more from what you are than what you teach. So showing up, doing the good work, and having a purpose behind it. So much to learn. I hope this episode was helpful, and I'll catch you guys all on the next one. Bright and early, Monday morning, 7 a.m. live with another episode of the Talk to Tara Morning Show, where we'll go over some more tips, tricks, and ideas to help you become the best entrepreneur you can be. Thanks, friends. Have an incredible weekend full of love and joy for the ones you care about most. I'll catch you on Monday live, 7 a.m. Till next time.